Card swipe fees have been capped in the United States. That was about a month ago, and payments processors stand to lose billions of dollars in annual revenue. If stunted in the U.S., they'll need to expand outward. Elizabeth Buse is in charge of that international growth for Visa. She's here to tell us how she plans to do it. So, Elizabeth, right now, Visa gets about 44% of its revenue from countries outside the United States. By 2015, your boss, Joe Saunders, wants it to be more than 50%. How are you going to meet that target?
You know, we have a huge opportunity for growth outside the U.S., and you're right that we have 44% of our revenues from outside the U.S., but just a year ago it was only 41%, and 62% of our growth in the most recent quarter came from outside the U.S. because there is massive opportunity to take cash and check spend and move it to credit, to debit, very importantly, and to prepaid products.
But is the shift going to be more a factor of the growth that you're seeing outside the United States, or perhaps a loss of revenue opportunity inside the United States because of the Durbin Act and the caps on debit card transaction fees?
Without question, it's growth outside the United States because the opportunity is so substantial.
Where, for example, and what specifically are the strategies to tap into that growth?
Where is everywhere, meaning Asia Pacific, Latin America, Central Europe, Middle East, Africa, but the strategies differ based on the stage of market development. So in the more developed economies, Japan, just growing traditional debit products that we take for granted here is a big opportunity. In Russia, where 90% of the volume on debit cards comes from the ATM, moving that to the point of sale. Pretty basic stuff here in the U.S., but huge growth opportunities abroad. Then you get to the more interesting, innovative technologies in places like Africa, where you're just not going to see plastic cards and swipe terminals. It's going to be the mobile channel that will really drive the electronification of payments there.
Many people in financial services, whether it's in payments processing like Visa or on the card issuance or lending side like the banks, would say that the opportunity exists in emerging markets. But as Visa has pointed out in its regulatory filings, some of these other countries, some of them are emerging, some of them aren't. South Africa, Brazil, Canada, Australia have also started talking about regulating interchange. These are the transaction fees that get charged by the customer, the banks on either side of the transaction. And how much of a risk does that pose to your international strategy is what I'd like to know.
If we did nothing about it, it would be a risk. But because we're very focused on it, we think it's an opportunity. Outside the U.S., the governments are a critical stakeholder. Particularly in emerging economies, electronification of payments drives growth. Moody's has shown that. A lot of independent studies have shown it. So to the extent that the government has sensible regulation, where, like Russia just passed national payment systems legislation that creates a level playing field, that invites competition, that invites innovation, then government intervention is a very good thing, and it can actually accelerate the growth of our business, but it's something that has to be managed.
It's a difficult position, though, isn't it, for Visa, in the sense that regulating interchange does pose a threat to your business, but in arguing against it, you're effectively arguing for more money to end up in the pockets of the banks.
We're arguing for sensible regulation. Look at Australia. Our business has continued to grow well in Australia, despite the fact that the government there put caps on interchange.
How much higher or lower are those fees outside the United States than the 21-cent debit card transaction cap imposed by the Fed?
It varies widely by country, depending on the government.
Higher, lower, on balance?
It varies.
Can you generalize?
No.
All right. Elizabeth, good to see you here. I'm glad you came to talk to us about Visa's international business. We'd love to have you back. That is Elizabeth Buse. She runs Visa's business outside the United States. It includes Asia Pacific, Central Europe, the Middle East, and Africa here on the Inside Track.